Why on earth would I be so excited about one pea-sized potato?
Guten Yardening, everybody. About a month and a half ago, we cut some potato suckers off of our potato plants and put them in water. And then 2 weeks ago, we started an experiment. And we took those potato suckers, which had started to develop some roots and some other growth off of the stem, and transplanted them into a soilless mix. The idea is that because they're part of the same family as tomatoes, they're part of that nightshade family, that possibly we could get some potato development. Well, 1 weekend, and we certainly saw some potato development from the one plant that we pulled up. In fact, we saw about 10 tiny little red potatoes. But after 2 weeks, which is where we find ourselves right now, the tops, the suckers themselves, have died off completely. So that means we definitely need to make some modifications to our experiment. But before we show you what we're going to do to try to improve the experiment and improve the chances of our suckers thriving and surviving and developing those potatoes that we're looking for, we're going to harvest what's in these 2 bags to see what developed over these past 2 weeks. Let's take a look at what's underneath.
The first one I'm going to harvest is the one that we harvested in our last video, and you should check out that video to see those early results. I'm going to be a little less cautious with this one simply because I know that we're not trying to put this one back into the ground. So we'll see what's underneath the soil here, if anything. And it looks as though the potatoes that were here before have completely decomposed in this week. I see no signs of what was in here before. I'm a little surprised by that, but they weren't all that big, so maybe that's the reason why. I mean, they weren't that big. The top didn't have much life left in it, even when I put it back, and so they're completely gone. Let's take a look at the other one. Now, this is our second potato, and this is one that we had not actually dug up the first time. So I'm going to be really nice and cautious with this one to see. This was the bigger sucker at the start. So to see if there's anything in here that has developed, that still exists. You can see right here what's left of that sucker and how it's died off pretty much. So we're going to gently pull back the soilless mix here from around here. It's popped right off, and see if there's anything in here that is developed whatsoever. And when I planted it the first time, I planted it very, very deep down, and you can see that it's still going down, and we're about halfway down through the base. And as I'm looking, I don't see anything here off of this sucker, or much of anything. I'm just going to dig around right down in here and pull up and see if there's anything at all that pulled off. And it looks like there is not. I'm still going to go through and I'm going to pull out the rest of this soil to be sure I'm not missing anything. Now, I just found something that's pretty exciting. As I was putting the soil back in, there was something that I missed in this bigger one, the one that started bigger, and that is a little tiny red potato. Now, this is maybe not much, maybe it doesn't seem like much, but that is a proof that this can develop potatoes. So this must have come off right in here. It must have come off in here, off to the side. And if we can get one to develop in situations that are far less than ideal, clearly, for those suckers, then what we can do next, then what we can accomplish with this, I think the sky's the limit. So let's take a look right now at how we can improve this experiment to see better results. I mean, we're definitely going to get some potatoes if this is any indicator.
Now, granted, that probably wasn't the most exciting reveal ever. I mean, one potato that didn't rot away, and yet this is a fantastic start for our second phase of experiments, because we knew there were some limitations to the first round, but you never really know how things are going to develop until you try. And so now I'm going to show you what we're going to do with our next phase of the experiment to try to get many more and hopefully bigger potatoes in the future. But in order to do that next phase of the experiment, we have to collect some suckers.
All right, here we have our main stem. This is the main stem of our potato plant. And so what we're looking for are some of those lateral stems that come off the main stem. That's where we have our suckers. So we're going to use this. We're going to harvest these off of here for our experiment. And what's going to be key here is getting these into our experiment as quickly as possible. So here's one. Here's our second one. And I just need to harvest one more. Okay, the way this phase of the experiment is going to work is going to be really simple. I'm going to take off a few of these smaller stems from this plant, just like so, from this sucker. And this is what's going to go down into the water. Now, I'm doing this for all three. And once I get that set up, we have just these little plastic containers here. These are food-safe plastic containers. They're just under, well, there's about a liter here. A liter of water. And we're going to set that water up in 3 different ways. Each of these containers is going to be just slightly different in this part of the experiment. The first one is going to contain just plain water. The second will have this Dynagrow Grow plant food. It's a 795 fertilizer. And the third is going to have the Dynagrow, but this is the Bloom plant food, which is a 312-6. So we'll see if that makes a difference as we get this started. Because these are about a liter, and we would need for a non-recirculating system about a teaspoon per gallon, what we're going to do is we're going to add about 1/3 teaspoon of the fertilizer to this, and 1/3 teaspoon of the fertilizer to this. All right, here is our Grow fertilizer, and here is our Bloom fertilizer. And I am going to label these so we can keep track of what we're growing in which one. That's very important when you're doing an experiment, to label what's going where. So these suckers have been off of their main plant for about 3 minutes, and I don't really want to wait any longer. So I'm going to go ahead and get them into their system, nice and gently, just like so. And now I need to wrap these in foil. Now the primary reason we're going to wrap these in foil is very simple. We don't want any light to have access to the roots. I mean, in a regular growing system, there wouldn't be light accessing these roots. And we made that mistake the first time around, and we started to see some leaves developing on here, and that's not what we want. We want to see what will develop when it's covered from the beginning. So we're going to keep that light out by wrapping it like so. 1 down, 2 to go.
Well, now we have all 3 experiments all set up, wrapped in foil. We just need to move them to where they're going to be nice and warm and have plenty of light for the surface. The first container here is just water. The second is our 795 fertilizer. This is the Grow fertilizer. It's supposed to focus in on root growth. This is our 312-6 fertilizer, which is our Bloom fertilizer. So we'll see which of these performs the best. It's going to be kind of fun to see the difference between all 3, or if there is much of a difference. And that'll guide us as we continue to modify this experiment to improve the practice and improve, hopefully, the results from this potato until much more. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.